Or it's okay.
That's all right. Yeah, theirs are good. Theirs are gonna keep things going when things break.
Actually, a girl came to the meeting one day and everybody was really quiet.
Really? You mean y'all minded your manners?
Yeah.
I think they were more confused.
I know a couple people like that. A couple girls that are nerds.
Alright, that first question, I double font size on this thing.
On what? On Blender?
No, yeah, on Blender, the whole thing. I can't retain the read.
It's talking about the GUI, GTK GUI. The GUI, the toolbars.
And you can
Sorry,
run it
which,
later on if they get any new updates. You go out and phone down and put them in there. They
Don't
get
have
recreated
magnified
at the year or
I need double
Yeah.
font size.
oh, and
We
then,
have elections in February, and if you've signed in on this
you
meeting,
go into the interface
you're eligible to vote.
and
Which
in
is
there,
pretty liberal.
Yeah, since I don't know any better.
and I believe.
And if you come to 3 meetings each year, you're eligible to get elected without, you know,
Oh,
without any warning.
Yeah, more than 2, yeah, in trouble. Especially when nobody knows who I am. I'll keep my mouth shut, that's all.
Just sign different names each month.
Yeah.
Let's
Let's see, what do they want to know here?
Matter of fact, this summer.
Just put your social security number there at the end
Yeah,
for
right.
us.
And your credit card numbers and.
Yeah, and your birthday.
Yeah.
You want
Mother's
me
maiden
to put
name.
my mother's maiden name and
Yeah.
all that?
I was looking for laptop. A friend of mine gave me a laptop, the screen was gone. And so he ended up salvaging out the RAM, gave me the laptop. So
All you get is my email address.
I can go
Went there and,
Yeah.
you know, looking around, here's a guy's got
That's good enough.
a table set out.
There you go, and I put it in blue so it stands out a little
No,
bit.
I see is this, you know.
Maybe I should have hidden it in black.
Yeah, I would have to look. I've never
The key-
done it.
Keys back.
And I got magnifying glass.
Most of the time I need it all.
You have wireless connectivity to the
Top was
projector?
gone, his panel was gone.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Wireless connectivity to the projector?
No, he's plugged in, wired in.
Oh, okay, cool.
600 megahertz.
I wonder where the wire was, I guess.
Oh, it's about 15 feet long and most of it's laying on the floor right here.
Okay.
What the
The extension cord.
extension cord, yes. Okay.
So, the reason I bought it.
Well, how's everybody doing today? Everybody have a wonderful day? Did anybody break anything?
Not yet.
Not yet?
I'm working on it.
Well, we'll have a little chit chat for a couple minutes and get warmed up, and then we'll let Ed here get in on his talk. Do you want to do anything successful today?
Started the computer, it worked fine.
There you go.
Downloaded a bunch of videos to Books 24/7 about Cisco.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, sorry, gotta do it, you know.
iOS or CatOS?
iOS.
Oh. What are you breaking?
I didn't break it. Well, actually, I was working online and then all of a sudden my DSL modem crashed.
Oh.
So I had to restart that. It worked fine.
What kind is it?
SpeedStream is about 9 years old.
5100?
Yeah,
Okay. Has it got 4 lights or 5?
5.
Okay.
So
Those are usually pretty good.
I think on those, if you disassemble them and put heat sinks on them that are twice the size, it'll run better. Is that right?
I think you're mistaking that with the Motorola version.
Oh,
That was
okay.
one piece of crap.
I'm not electronically, I don't work good with a soldering iron or nothing like that, so.
Oh, you don't?
Not yet.
Nobody else here does either.
Hey, I do.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
I thought that kind of gone out of fashion.
What do you mean? I've got a fantastic Heiko digital selection soldering setup.
Hmm.
I can do it blindfolded.
You got a sucker too?
Solder sucker?
Sucker too?
Suckers are for suckers.
What do you use, that little, that braided, that braided wire and?
Pull it with braid is much cleaner, yeah.
Micro pace.
I'm sorry?
Micro pace.
There you go.
Electric.
Yep.
Electrically. Electrically.
That's what I got. It's in a box.
Super glue.
Oh, there you go.
It's not bigger than a bread box.
But if you don't
I've never heard of
want,
that before.
so did anyone do anything terrible today?
Sat on a meeting for 6 hours.
Other than Ed that disappeared from the entire world for 6 hours?
Yeah.
And I couldn't find him until I was going to leave the office? No chitter chatter. Any news in Slashdot that we want to talk about? Maybe about a particular Silk Road news article.
Silk Road?
The Silk Road trial, they're having trouble with it because the jury members don't understand the internet.
I don't know how it works or what. That's bad.
Oh, it's,
But they're being judged by their peers.
what is Silk Road?
Well, then they're okay then.
I'm sorry?
Explain what Silk Road is?
Well, about 5 to 10,000 years ago, some people figured out that you could steal things and resell them and make money.
Oh, yeah.
And then they figured out that they could sell things that were in high demand, like chemical substances.
Like buy them where they're cheap and sell them where they're unavailable.
So, so for example, if you're in Burma and you want to buy some horse,
Where's that?
Burma?
Burma. Oh, Myanmar.
Yeah.
It's, I just, not that, you mentioned it, I didn't bring it up.
I was making a reference to Silk Road.
I spent all day today working on a product
Okay,
that we're shipping
okay.
to Burma.
Come back because you don't have the right name of the country.
And where are you shipping through?
That's not my job. My job was to get the product ready for shipment.
Well, somebody else probably would know about the name change, probably.
Actually, we called Myanmar. They came to visit us. I said, "How do you pronounce the name of your country?" And they said, "Burma."
Wow.
Because we were dealing with the military.
Oh, the military says Burma?
The military is the recent change was from a military dictatorship called Burma to more of a civil government called Myanmar.
Oh, it was the other way around.
I thought it was
I may be wrong. Go on to
So if you're talking
Wikipedia and look at it.
Burma, if you're talking-
Actually, he could be right depending on the hour of the day, too.
Yeah.
That's true.
As long as those
It's been Myanmar for a while and
civilians-
then some.
10 years, something. Well, but no, it's
More than 10.
no, whatever. It's been, but the liberalization, the trading partners. It's been like 2 or 3 years, very very quickly. We're one of their first trading partners.
So other than a geography lesson, Stanford, did you do anything successful today other than packaging product?
Well, I mean, that's what I spent the whole day, getting the software configured so that we could.
So you were learning about containerization?
No, I'm just trying to get the software configured so that we could make a disk image of it and send the disks over.
Oh. See, I was going for a joke about putting things in a box, but.
But no, there was plenty of that going on in the bay next to me. And we had to, one was we had to go out and buy we had to send over a server. We had to send it to a monitor with the server. We had to run down to Best Buy. We had to buy the monitor. Didn't have one in stock, so we got the display model. So then we brought it back to our shop. Now we got to find a shipping container for it because it's a display model.
Why didn't you go to
They said
what about
they
Micro
wanted-
Center?
Well, they said they wanted a display for the server, so we got them a display model.
That joke was
Is that
meta.
right?
I love that.
Oh, yeah, that's,
Insert laugh track.
that's a lot of land for computers.
Stanford, next time go
I
to
might buy a computer from you.
Not when you're working in South Kirkwood. I guess it's equidistant.
Peripherals and parts.
So
we went to the best, I know,
Better selection.
we went to the Best Buy on Watson or whatever instead of Micro Center for convenience.
That's a pretty big Best Buy on Watson.
Yeah, that's true.
They should have a
Well,
lot of stuff.
If we don't have any techie talk, how about we let Super Ed here get started with his talk about Blender?
All right. How many people know what Blender is? Okay. What is Blender?
You
can make
smoothies, fruit drinks.
I have
Okay.
2 of them at home. Does that count?
Is it a three-dimensional graphics editor?
It's a three-dimensional graphics editor or animation tool. It's used for doing 3D modeling. You can do CAD/CAM type things with it. You can do 3D printing with it. You can do games. It actually has a games engine. It has a physics engine
And a movie editor.
and a movie. And it actually has one of the best open source movie editors out there, built right into it. Has a physics engine built into it that allows you to do fluid simulations. You can do soft body, hard body, game physics, all kinds of things. A lot of which we're not going to talk about today. We could have months of discussions about all the capabilities within Blender. It is a very powerful, all-encompassing package that really was originally started with a broadcasting company in the Netherlands, as I recall, that essentially donated it into open source some years ago, and it's been developed ever since. The biggest commercial competitor to Blender is AutoCAD Maya. Maya is actually what most of the movie studios use for their animation and for their 3D graphics. However,
MIA?
Blender is making
MAYA.
inroads.
How do you spell that?
MAYA, as in the Mayans. They basically, Blender is making some inroads, mostly for smaller animation companies that don't want to spend the $6,000 to $7,000 per seat for a Maya license. Also, from the fact that in many cases Blender is catching up to what Maya's capability and actually surpassing it in many cases. There's also been several projects, open source projects, to develop games, develop movies. To go out there, I'll give you some links for information at the end here that you can find a whole lot more. Also some information on books and websites you can go to learn more if you're interested. What we're going to cover today is really just the very, very basics. We won't even go through everything that you're going to see on the screen because it would take way too long. And to be honest, some of this stuff is so I don't know what the right word is, but basically you may or may not ever use it. It's there, but yeah, it's
esoteric.
Yeah, esoteric. That's the word I'm looking for. Because you're going to use it when you're doing something just really, really different. Like, for example, you're trying to make the Shrek movie or something. What we will then talk about is textures and images and renders. Basically, at a high level, and I didn't bring in a slide on this because I want to go try to get into Blender as fast as we can. But basically, a 3D object, which is what we're going to be dealing with in this session, is a series of geometric points in 3D space, connected by lines and then covered with a face, okay, which essentially gives it a surface, which then can be textured, very much like just drawing something onto a cube or some 3D thing. You can control the color. You can control the specularity, which is essentially how light reflects off of it. So, for example, my phone has a fairly low specular refraction. Basically, what that means is it tends to be kind of blurred when light hits it and reflects off. Some other objects, like say his mouse, has a fairly high specularity because what will happen is the light hits it and you really do see the reflection of the light. It's that white spots that you see in there. Those are the specular highlights. So the shinier an object is, the tighter its reflection. So actually what you see here is pretty much what that light looks like up there that's hitting it and on this. You don't necessarily notice that. Whereas on my phone, you don't see that white spot. And that's because it's a softer surface, a smoother surface, and so it doesn't reflect it quite as much. So those kinds of things essentially are what you can control. A lot of parameters in terms of that. The other thing that you can do is you can take images, 2D pictures, and you can apply those onto the surface. And that's done quite often for things like castle walls or for skin, for example, is a big one, because you want to see those. You want to actually get those little imperfections because that's what makes it look real. and also you can use mapping with the image to give it a texture that looks three-dimensional. In other words, my phone actually, if you feel it or if you look at it closely, there are ridges going across the phone. You can simulate those ridges without having to necessarily put 3D points everywhere where you want those. You can use an image and then have an offset. So you, like this table is a good example too. It has a 3D texture, which is the wood, and you can feel it and you can see it. You can put a map on there and you can make it look three-dimensional. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about, once I've created some of these images, I'd like to be able to use them in, say, a presentation, PowerPoint, OpenOffice, what have you. I might want to take, let's say I have a photograph that I took on vacation, and I want to put some comical annotation in there with some little character doing something. Let's go find a character and see, and we can create an image with that, and then you can merge that with say GIMP or some kind of a 3D package to essentially merge those photographs together. And then the next thing we'll talk is about where can you go get content, because we're not 3D modelers here, or most of us aren't. They basically, you're not going to necessarily want to create your own objects. You want to just use them. You want to be able to bring them in, set them into your scene, take a virtual picture of them, and then use that picture. So we'll talk about how we do that. And then finally, going further with Blender, I'll give you some links of things that you can look at for going further with that. There's a lot of resources. Okay, so if you are interested, the starting point for getting Blender is blender.org. Out there, you can download the appropriate version. Blender runs on Linux, Windows, Apple, maybe even a few other.
Used to run on BOS too. Used to run on BOS too.
Yeah. So, in any event, I'm going to be running this demonstration on Linux. Thanks to Andrew for letting me borrow his laptop. And so we'll kind of go from there. So let's go ahead and get started. When you first bring up Blender, you're going to be presented with the main object window. There's a scene that is the default scene that has a couple of basic objects in it. The first is the cube, which is basically just that. It's basically 8 points connected by, in fact, if I zoom in here, you can see there's points here. There's the lines.
How do you zoom in?
You zoom in with the mouse wheel. I'll talk about that in a second.
Doesn't work. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, you use the mouse. Couple things to back up for just a second. Before you get into Blender, a couple things you really have to have. You have to have a good graphics adapter. You have to have a wheeled 3-button mouse, a typical mouse, nothing.
And push down.
Wheel mouse?
Yeah, need to have a real mouse. It's very difficult to work with Blender in a tablet type of thing like this. So basically, what the controls for the mouse, you have, there's the right button is the opposite of what you normally think. The right mouse button is what you use to select objects. The left mouse button is actually for completing an action. So if I take and I say select this cube, and then I use a grab command to grab it, it's going to move with my mouse until I hit the left mouse button. Once I hit the left mouse button, then that action is completed. Okay. Other things to remember, Control-Z should undo. Oh, Control-Z, not Function-Z, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Control-Z will do an undo. That works back, I think by default it goes back like 20 There are settings within the properties that you can extend that up to, I think, about 100. 100 actions can be in the undo. Okay, the other objects that we have in here, we have a camera, and this is where you use to take the virtual picture, and we have a light. In this case, the light that we have in here is what's called a point light. It's basically like a typical incandescent light bulb. Light goes out in all directions from a central point. There are different kinds of lights. We'll talk a little bit about those and as we get a little bit further along. So the other thing that you have here, this whole overall here is called the scene. The grid at the bottom, this is essentially your ground. This is essentially where the 0 point in the entire scene is the ground. So you can go below ground, you can go above ground, but essentially there. Then as far as your coordinates go, you have an X, Y, and Z. Z, Y, X. And that also corresponds here on the grid to the red line being your X-axis, the blue is your up and down, and right and left. It's all relative to where your camera is. So it's stable within the environment, but depending on where your camera is aimed, it may be reverse, just like real life. Okay. A couple of basic things in terms of getting around. As I mentioned, we've got the scrolling the wheel will get you in and out. Holding the wheel down and dragging will move the scene around. So all I'm doing is taking the wheel, pushing down on it, and it's rotating.
It's a pan.
Okay. If you hold the shift key with the middle wheel mouse, then you can drag right, left, up and down, okay, to get around. There are several shortcuts. If you have a full-size 101 key keyboard, it's much easier. On this keyboard, you have to kind of put yourself in numlock, but the number keys on a keyboard are how you can control some fast actions so for the camera. So for example, I'm going to put this in numlock here. I hope. 0 takes you to the view as the camera currently sees it. Okay, so right here, this is the image. If I were to take a picture of it right now, I'll just do render image. Okay, that's the image I'm going to get. Once you get into the image, hit the escape key. That will take you back to your camera. One thing to note on here, there are actually hidden panels on the side of the window here. So if I do an in, that brings this out. And one of the things that's real handy is this lock camera to view. Once you turn that on, hit the in key again to get rid of that. Now, when I move, I actually can move the scene. The camera will stay steady. The default action in Blender is that you move the camera, not the scene. But by doing a lock camera to view, that will move the camera just like you have when you're looking at setting up the scene. So it just makes it more consistent. But that's not the default behavior. You have to turn it on. You can, once you have set up the environment that you like working in with Blender, you can do a file user preferences, and you can save in there. You can save the user settings, so that way that will always be checked whenever I go back in. I'm gonna play with settings right now. There's a lot of things in settings, lots of tutorials on those as well. Okay. The controls on the right and left here, we'll go into them as we start. These tools over here essentially are ways to manipulate the scene. So in this case, I can do like a translate. If I select the cube, I do translate. That basically is going to allow me to move the object around. Again, if I left click, that'll leave it there.
Hang on a second, what if you're missing the tabs on the left?
I'm sorry?
What if you're missing the tabs over on the left?
Right here?
Yeah.
think that's just a projector.
Well, it's this screen is not showing.
Aren't there tabs out there you're looking at?
You don't have tabs?
No.
You got an old version then.
Oh.
They introduced tabs about 2 versions ago.
Can you show them what
Go
version
to
you're
the
using?
help.
Can you see them?
Show them what
Click on the
version. Go to help and show the version.
And then about,
It says what it is in the upper
Can you
right.
go to show them the version that you're on?
okay.
Yes. Two 2.72.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
What is yours?
267.
These was 267.
Yeah, I'm on 272. 2.72B. That should be the latest version.
I'm on 273.
Oh, okay. They've got one in on me.
No, you're unstable. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, 272 is what I had on, so I didn't know. I guess they probably just released it. All right. So, any case, you will have these in the older version. They're there, but they're in a different place. They introduced the tabs to try to organize, because what was happening is all of this was in like one big long panel, and it became very unruly. So, again, we have rotate, which is going to rotate the object. We have scale, which will make it bigger or smaller. Mirror, I'm not going to go into that. That basically will duplicate it. And then you can duplicate. So now I can create a second. And there's different kinds of duplicates. There's duplicate, which duplicates and creates an actual duplicate. There's duplicate link, which doesn't create a separate object. It just creates a link to the separate object, so that any changes I make to the original object will automatically propagate to all other objects to which it's linked. So to give an example on this, if let's duplicate this linked, and then if I go into this and just pull that up, both objects are going to have the same change is going to occur to all objects. This is very handy when you're trying to replicate the same thing multiple times and you want to be able to just have one version of it and have it appear in multiple places in your scene. All right. And then there's quite a few others in here that we'll get into that actually we probably won't get into, but are more in terms of modeling and things like that. Okay. You can also join objects together. If I take 2 objects and I click them and join them, that'll create a new object of the 2 combined. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and reload the startup file. All right, any questions about the basic scene at this point? All right, so now, okay, so we can play around in Blender. There's a lot more stuff in there that we'll get into, but now let's see if we can get something to work with in Blender. So I'm going to go to a website called ShareCG. This website is where you can go. It's one of several, and I'll give you some links and there you go here, that you can go to get basically free models of just about anything you can think of for the most part. Also gives a lot of samples, tutorials, other things in there as well. The only thing you've got to really kind of pay attention to is what the various formats are that are in there. We'll talk about that here in a second. But let's say for this first example here, I want to find a computer.
Numlock
Actually,
is
first
on.
of all, I have to turn off my numlock.
You open a new tab. All right.
Okay, so we'll go find a computer. And then this will come up with just some samples of various computer chair. So what I'm going to go after is actually this Bank One computer. Right? When you're, I know, look over here at format. This gives you a description, but the format here, we're going to work with OBJ files. OBJ is a standard 3D format originally developed by Wavefront. It is pretty much an industry standard model format. OBJ works not only with Blender, but it also works with Photoshop and Gimp, some other programs too, as long as they understand the whole 3D thing. So just download this. And then once you get it downloaded, then you just want to unzip it. Now I've already done that for purposes here, so I'm not going to do that again. But you basically would unzip it. The files that you're after in here are essentially the UV and the JPEGs. You can look at the README, that often that'll give you information about limitations within the model or whatever. So let's go back over to Blender. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the cube. And you do the delete to delete. You can either hit the delete, select the object with your right mouse button, hit either the delete key or the X key. In this case, delete key.
What if it doesn't?
And you confirm delete, and it'll delete it. All right. Now what I want to do is import in the computer. So when you go to File Import, by default, these are the various types of files that Blender will import. However, you can go into the add-ons out at the Blender website, and you can download pretty much any format. There are 3D, there's like SVG, there's those, some for 3D printing, there's some for Maya, AutoCAD, etc. So right now we're going to go with an object. When you import it, there are various characteristics that you can set to kind of modify the object as it comes in. Right now, I'm just going to let everything default. Go to my documents, and we'll go into the computer. So this is that computer bank. Select it, import it. Okay, and there is the computer model. Okay. Now right now it's basically sitting through the floor. I'm not going to worry about that for purposes of this right now. Go back to my functions and unlock. And I'm going to see how the camera is seeing it. Okay, so right now the camera has it kind of out. I'm going to, again, I restarted, so camera view.
Just for curiosity, what's the learning curve on this one?
To do the basic things we're doing right here, probably you'd want to spend a few days playing with it.
Okay.
To get into some of the other stuff can take years.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, if you start looking at some of the physics stuff, and if you guys want to, I can show you some of the other more advanced things. That we'll just kind of do that ad hoc. But I mean, to learn the whole package, I don't even know the whole package at this stage. I've been working with it for years. But it really comes down to what do you need, and look for what it is you need to do, and find your tutorials around those things, because there's a lot of stuff in here. You know, do you want to create fire? You can create virtual fire, right?
You want this computer.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to create a, you know, like one of those big scenes where the water forms together, becomes a face, and then goes attacks. You can do that. Yeah. So, but you've got to spend the time to figure out what are all the parameters that you need to set.
I guess making clouds would be very easy then.
Yes, clouds are actually kind of built in. Yeah, there's some again, you got to know how to use it, but there are capability to make clouds, smoke, hair that will actually move with the character and and animate.
You have to really understand lighting.
So,
you have to understand lighting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You have to understand lighting and a lot of other things too. But in fact, we're going to talk about that here in just a second.
Ed, do you use it professionally yourself? I mean, for your work?
I use it. I don't use it necessarily in my day job, but I do have a small side business where I do 3D graphics and animation.
Okay.
So I've done. I typically build models and then sell them for people using games and things like that. But I've also done a couple of small animation projects. Actually, I'm working on them right now I've been working on this one for quite some time, but basically to do an education video for the deaf. I got a little bear that is going to do that does sign language.
Huh.
To teach kids sign language.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
yeah,
Okay.
I can show that to you guys later too if you want. Okay, so we've got this lined up. This is where it's going to go. Now, if I render this, it doesn't look so good. And part of the reason that that's the case, if we take a little bit different view,
Is the light's coming from the wrong direction?
right? Exactly.
It's
So,
in the shadow, yeah.
all right, so let's see. Let's go.
There's the light up there.
Yeah, see the light is up there,
Yeah. That's the black dot up there?
Mm-hmm.
right?
Select the black dot.
Yeah, so you can use, I'm using that. So basically, if I look from the top here, and you can also, there are shortcuts for some of the like the view in here. I could say, you know, view bottom, view top. So let's view top. So you can see here, I got the light here, the camera's here, so the light came this way. So if I grab the light and just drag it over here.
And how'd you do that again?
Okay, light was here. I see this white circle.
Yeah?
I just basically just grab that with the left mouse button and just drag till it came over here.
Okay.
You can also use these arrows here. So if you wanted to bring it down to here and then bring it over here, you can use these. You'll notice here when I look, this is the front view that we're on here. You can see that up here. And ortho versus perspective. This is the perspective view. You get that by there's a shortcut key for 5. You can also do view perspective down here. But basically this is making a perspective view so that as you can see the ground is kind of moving away from you, getting smaller as it gets away. The orthographic view lines everything up, and so that way if you've got 2 objects and you want to make sure they're lined up no matter how far away they are, you can use the orthographic view to make sure that they're all lined up.
And how do you select the view? How do you select the view?
View, you got left, right, back, front. There's view, perspective, or ortho. See this where it says num 0, num 7, num 1, num 3, num 5. Those are shortcut keys. So if you're going to spend any time working in Blender, you'll probably learn all the shortcut keys because they really save a whole lot of time. But everything is also available through the menus as well. And it tells you what the shortcut key is. So if I wanted to go to the top, I can select the top here. Or if I want to go front, I can select the 1 from the numeric keypad. That'll put me 1. And then, you know, basically you can kind of, you know, right, left, top, and then the control kind of is the opposite. But again, if you go to view, you can see what they are, what all the shortcuts are. Okay. All right. So now let's go back to camera view. Now again, I'm using the shortcut key num 0, but you could also go here to view and use camera. That will take you to the camera view. So either way is going to work depending on what you've got. All right, so now I'm going to go render. There we go. So now we have it looks a little bit more like a computer. However, it's kind of gray. So now what we want to do is we want to give it some texture. So I'm going to go to the front view and just kind of zoom in on it a little bit. And I'm gonna take this panel and stretch it out a little bit so we can see what it has. This panel right here is your modifier panel. Essentially, this is where you can do a lot of modification to a given object without necessarily changing its structure. So the first tab that we have here, this is your camera. This actually is all the parameters around your camera. If you're into photography, you've got all the various things you would have in a camera in here as well. You've got focal length and frame stops and all those kinds of things that you can control. You've got, if you're doing a video, you can say what, how many frames per second, all those kinds of things. There's also the physics and, basically here's some of the stuff with the physics, the scene view, there's object properties, and where it is, what it is. In this case, I have the lamp selected. So it's telling me it's the lamp, it's telling me where it is, what layer it's on. I won't get into the layers right now, but then there's the length group, and then here's the camera. So I have a light selected. This allows me to set the properties of the light. I can select the color of the light. I can select what type of light. So a point light's what we're dealing now. I can do a sun, in which case the sun's pointing this way. You do a spotlight, a hemisphere light, and different types of lights. Right now, the main ones that you're going to be interested in is point and sun for the most part. Again, point light goes out in all directions. You can kind of see that here. A sunlight. The thing that's really interesting to remember about a sunlight is just like the sun outside. It hits all objects within the scene from the same angle and the same intensity. Okay, just like the sun would do. Whereas a point light will tend to have more fade off because your intensity is and it's less, in some cases it's less parallel because the distance is not. The further an object is from its light source, the more parallel the light beams. And so Blender understands how light works, and that's a lot of what goes into this. So the thing we're really interested in actually is the texture. So one of the things that you're going to want to look at when you bring in an object from a content is oftentimes what looks like one object is actually multiple objects. So in this case, I have the frame is separate from the light panels. They actually have different configurations so that you can color each one differently. The controls are a different object, different set of objects all the way through here. So put the object back together.
How are you doing that?
Okay.
Control.
I'm using
Stupid function, not function. There you go.
How did you pull that layer off?
What's that?
How did you pull that layer away from the?
I'll go back and do it again. Yeah. Okay. What I did here is, using the right mouse button, you select the object. So I can select the frame, or I could select. I'll zoom in so you can see it a little better. So that's the frame. This is the control. These are the little controls.
That's with the right mouse button?
Yeah, once you do that, just grab this little green arrow, and that'll pull them away.
Oh.
Then put it back and just Control Z to just undo the move that I did. So you can move, each of these objects can be moved, even though it came in as one main object, each of these, it's actually sub-objects that can each be manipulated separately. The beauty of that is then I can take this object. Let's say these buttons right here. Let's say I would like to have those be, pick a color, blue. I'd like them to be blue. There we go. Now they're blue. Okay, and this is the shader control here. Let's say, okay, in here. Okay, so on the frame, let's say I want the frame to be maybe a little goldish color. Okay, so there's the frame. Then the other thing that's real handy when you're dealing with multiple objects, let me see if there's a shortcut for it. No. Okay, the H function will hide the selected object so that you can work with objects behind it. Alt H hides it, Alt H brings it back. I believe there is probably something in here where you can actually do it through a menu, but. And again, I'm moving this around. Again, I'm using the wheel to just press down and drag. If I want to move this, right and left, I'm holding the Shift key down with the wheel. That allows me to get everything into view, so I can then scroll in, shift, and drag over. And so now I can take, all right, so all these ones here that are yellow highlighted now, those are one object. So if I come over here and I say I want those to be white. Okay. And you can also control the color through dragging these if you want to do the RGB color. It also provides different ways that you can enter the color. And let's say we want this one to be red. There we go. Okay. Now notice it did it to both sides, because this is actually one connected object here. Then let's say we take this one. All right. So now this panel is a little different. For right now, we'll just give it a color. Find that. All right, and check here. So now we can take, for example, we can hide this, which leaves this square here. Now, let's say on this square, what I would like is a picture, as if it were a TV screen, right? So, as you can see here, they've set up a shader called screen or texture. What I need to do is get an image into that. So if I go over here to the texture, I can now add an image, and we'll open up. Let's see here. Go to.
How do you select it without it moving?
I need to go.
And how do you select something without moving?
Hmm?
How do you select something and not move it?
If you just right-click, that should just select it. And as long as you don't hit the move key, it shouldn't move. Now, if you've got something that you're like hanging on to and you moved it, hit the escape key, because you probably started somewhere along to move it, and the escape key will put it back where it was usually. Okay, so let's go in your documents. And let's see, I've got a couple of images here. I'm going to just pick this first image. Actually, let me try to point at the other one. There we go. So now in this image we have here. So now I'm going to go here into the render. So I actually have this image started in here. What I need to do is scale it down. And it's upside down, but that's okay. You get the idea. You can flip it. You can do all kinds of things with that. But basically now I've got this image in here. So now if we unhide everything, and then I go to the view top, scroll out, and to the solid view. Right. Now notice I've got my light, I left that as a sun. Let me make it back to a point. Now we'll render it again. There. So now we have a computer with a little screen, the various colors. I could also color in the rest of this stuff, but you can pick whatever color you want. You can also put images on, say, onto the the case, what have you. So just to give you a quick shot of what some of this looks like. All right. One of the things that's really kind of cool with Blender is you can set up. You can have multiple panels to create a panel or to split a panel. You grab these little. You see these little arrow or lined corners here where the cross hits. When you click on that with the left mouse button, you can then drag it over and you can open up a new window. If you go to the edge, right click, you can join something together, and that will basically get rid of that. Once you have the new window, then you can select to say, what do I want in that window? In this case, I want to see the image editor. So we can see both objects here. Right. So if I go here to I select the case, and I go into edit mode on it. This is what's called an image map. Basically, what you're seeing here, you definitely want a widescreen monitor when you're doing it. You can get by without it, but you really want it. So each of these surfaces is mapped to an image. So if let's see, if I open, let's take an image. Let's see. I'm just going to take kind of a bogus image here. We'll take this one. Right. So this image here, select. You can see that this image has a thing in here where it's going to show normal function on the screen. Right? So I could instead of using that other image, I could have used this image, and chances are that would have said normal function. But where each of these panels are here, those correspond to the same point here. So if I select these, you can see that this part of the image is what's going to appear here.
So basically, on the left-hand side, what it's doing is taking the right-hand image and flattening out on the left-hand side. So it's like opening up like a cardboard box.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's exactly like that. So when you look at the object, this is essentially what's called the UV map. So each of these spots here, you can zoom in on, and you can use either GIMP or Photoshop or whatever. In fact, there's even a texture painter within Blender that will allow you to actually paint on there using virtual paintbrushes, etc. So you can basically, once you set this up, you can basically, if you want to decide to say, Intel inside or whatever, you could go to the image and put in this spot here, assuming that's where, So right here, you just put Intel inside, and then that's what would show here. So let me give an example. Because of the space, I'm going to go ahead and join this back down. I'm going to bring this out. And then what we're going to do is go into keep this object, and I'm going to give it image. Open up C1. This one. Okay. So now, if we do a render, assuming I have everything set up right, that image should be showing in here now. The problem is that this, actually, let's see, the screen texture, I will change that to use this texture instead. And it should have normal function in here. But anyway, that basically this image then maps into that. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of how you put together an object and get an object to render for an image. Now, what do we want to do with this? Well, the reason we wanted to do this is because we wanted to bring this picture into something else. So first thing we want to do is look at our render settings. And one of the ones a couple things here. First of all, there's the size. Okay, it's going to be 1920 by 1080. This resolution percentage, that's basically for previewing like we've been doing right now. It's only rendering a 50% resolution, so it can do it faster. If you want the full image, then you would take this to 100%, and then it would create a full image that size. It takes a little longer, but it would render the whole thing. I'm not gonna set this to 100 here, simply just because we're just kind of playing around. The other thing that is important here is if you want the image to have a transparent background, which in most cases you will, you need to set what the sky is going to be in the shading, in this case transparent. Right. If I didn't do that, what would happen is the background would be a solid gray, which is the sky color. So by making this transparent and now doing a render, you'll notice the classic squares for transparent. So now I can say image, save as image, and you've got some controls here. You want PNG. You want to make sure you use RGBA so that you've got the alpha, which will give you the transparency. You can set your compressions, etc. Go in here, and I'm just going to call this computer.
Number locks on again.
Yeah. You get spoiled with a full keyboard. You really do. There we go. Computer. Save as image. Okay. So now, if we go to File Manager, I believe I've kept it in Documents here. Yep, there we go. There's the picture. So now, I think you all know how to bring in an image into whatever package you're working with. You could then bring that in as a transparent image, and then use that as, say, a background for as a background for a presentation or what have you. Pretty simple. Nothing to it, right?
So do you use this with Windows or Unix?
I've used it with both, actually.
Okay.
I have for the most part, I use Windows for some of the heavy duty stuff that I do, but I have a Linux system that I use for purposes of testing, or if I'm going to use things like GIMP and some of those things, they just work better on Linux.
Okay.
So it kind of depends on whichever tool I'm going to use it with.
Yeah.
So in some cases, I use this with a tool called Poser, which is another animation tool, and that only runs on Windows. So, but it doesn't really matter. It works the same.
Okay.
On all three environments. Yeah, even on Apple. It's pretty much everything.
Because I've used GIMP with Windows a few times. Got it to work. Didn't understand what I was doing and shut it down.
I have gotten GIMP to work on Windows, but to be honest, I use Photoshop Elements if I'm on Windows. If I'm in the Linux environment, but there are some things GIMP will do that Photoshop won't do, especially if you're trying to create your own textures.
Mm-hmm.
GIMP's got a lot more tools for creating computer-generated textures than Photoshop, at least for that Photoshop Elements and some of those things have. They're more advanced
That's the free
version,
version, isn't it?
Hmm?
Is it Photoshop Elements the free version, or?
No, it's like $89, something like that. Close enough to compared to the however many hundreds you would.
Yeah, it's free compared to the other price tags.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So let's say we wanted to make this a little more complex. Say we wanted to have a second object in here. We've decided we really want to blow up the computer. So I'm not going to get into it. And quite honestly, we could blow up the computer, and we could actually make it fragment all over the screen, but I'm not going to go that far. Well, all we're going to do here is I'm going to import another object. Again, I got this from ShareCG. Freebie Canon. Okay. Now, notice that the Canon's just a little bit smaller than the computer. So what we want to do there is scale this. We'll just keep, and the way I did this, you hit the scale and you just keep moving your mouse right. One way is if you, if I move it this way, it goes down. If I move it this way, it goes up. We get it right about there. Okay. Then again, the Canon's not really using the red arrow here to bring it down. I'm going to pull it, use the green arrow to bring it over, and then we'll use the rotate. And then there's on rotate, there's this option to constrain. So I'm going to constrain it to the Z-axis so that when it rotates, it's only going to rotate around the Z-axis. And again, you can see the Z-axis down here is the blue. If I do a rotate on, say, the Y-axis, then it's just going to go here. You see this little yellow dot right there? That's what's called the origin. So that's the virtual center of the object. You'll notice over here, you've got a little dot here. That's the virtual center. So whenever you rotate, it always rotates around its origin. So that's where you kind of have to kind of watch where that is, because sometimes it's not in the very middle. Sometimes it's in different places, depending on what the person who put the model together wanted to do. So I'm going to do a view from top so we can see. So you see, even though it looked like that was all lined up, it's not. So I'm going to move this around, rotate. And actually what we might do, make one rotate from here and we'll go there. That. Then we'll do a view front, and just kind of make sure they line like they're both on the ground there. I could have moved the computer up or the can down. It doesn't really matter. All right, so now let's look at the camera view.
Now shoot it.
Okay. All right, so now we've got it kind of lined up here. Let's do one more check to make sure our light and all that looks good. We'll go from the top. I'm just going to move the light back a little bit here. And the other thing I think I'm going to do is make the light just a little brighter. I'll take it up to about a 3, and it's about 3 times its normal intensity. And now we'll go back to view the camera. All right, now let's do a quick render. Wow. There you go. So now we got the camera aimed there. Now, let's see if we can make the camera or the Canon a little more interesting.
Turn it into a brass color.
Yeah, so we can bake. Well, let's see. I think this one came with. All right, here's the APS Canon. And let's both. All right, there we go. So it's got a Canon. It has a Canon. Okay. So we basically want to set this, and we want to load the image. There should be a Canon. I believe there's a Canon picture here. Let's see if we can find it real quick. Canon. Oh, yeah, UV. That's correct. No, I'm sure I'm not replacing that Canon, and then we want to texture. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So now we've got the image texture that came with the Canon applied to the Canon, so now it has a more realistic look. And again, we can save this out and use that as a image in our presentation. Any questions? Not so far.
It's gonna take a long time to learn this guy.
Actually, what you can do, I'll give you the links, but basically you can find a lot of really good tutorials out there. There's a lot of really good basic books that you can. In fact, there's even a Blender for Dummies.
No, but
Yeah. Make sure you
I'll write
version
that down.
2. Actually, it's probably version 3 now because this has all changed since then. But if you spend an evening kind of going through some of the basic tutorials, they're really good in terms of giving you how to get around, watch them a couple times, and kind of see what they're doing. Most of the time the tutorials will have a little widget at the bottom that'll tell you what keys they're hitting and what they're doing, so you can go back and play and what have you. A lot of interesting things that you can do with that too. So definitely kind of play with the tutorials. Get in there and just start playing around. I will say it's very easy to get lost if you don't
How is
take the time.
how has the camera track progressed over the years? The track movement and
Yes, it can track movement.
but I mean, how has it progressed? Is it still you have to tie it to an object or?
Yeah, you still have to tie it.
Okay.
That's pretty much the standard way most 3D packages work. If you wanted the camera to stay say locked onto here, you would basically you would do a parent-child camera, things like that. And see if I move the Canon, the camera is going with it because I made so that's how, like, if I'm doing an animation, and in fact that's what this little thing down here is all about. This is the time bar for animation. If I'm doing an animation and I'm moving the camera across the screen, I can parent the camera to it, and that way the camera will always stay in the same relative position to the object, even though the object won't move through the scene. So you got somebody running across a scene and you've got a scene in the background, you can keep the camera moving with the character, and if he comes across another character, the camera will automatically kind of come through. Gets a little tricky, obviously, when things change, and we're not really going to get into a lot of animation, but animation, just like any movie set type of thing, you only do what you need to do for the scene. So the object, you don't need to model the entire object if you're only going to show the front. Just like they don't build the whole scene for a movie unless they're going to show something from the back of the scene. If you have something that's going to change, that's like I said, you've got the camera going against this character, but then as soon as the character comes up to the other one, you want the camera to stay with the previous character. Well, make that 2 scenes. First scene is they come to that point, that stops. Then the next frame, you get a whole new scene, and you start from where that other one left off. Just make sure everybody's in the same position, and then work. Anyway.
Question over here.
Yeah, how do you use levels?
Sorry?
How do you use levels
Layers?
or layers?
Okay. there's a couple of different things in terms of these are the layers down here.
What purposes do they?
What purpose are they? There's a couple purposes. One is I can set lighting to be different by layer. So, for example, let's say I want the lighting for a specific character to be different or be more brighter, maybe than I want the other objects to be. I would put that character on a separate layer, set up the lights for that layer, and just say this light only applies to this particular layer. And so that character would be brighter than the other characters on the other layers. But then when I render, I tell it I want, so for example, let's say I take this, go back to a front view. Okay, so if I take the Canon, and I'm going to move that to layer 2. Okay, I will now see the computer is on layer 1. If I select layer 2, there is the Canon. If I select both layers, then I'll see both objects. And then when I render, it will render both layers. However, if I didn't select, if I select and only say layer 1, I'm only going to get the computer. So you can put different objects on different layers so that you can put different characteristics to the objects on those layers.
Does this help with collaboration with other people, other sections?
I'm sorry, say that.
Collaboration, does it help with collaboration?
Yeah, that can be part of it too. I mean, in all honesty, there's another tool in here that I'm not even going to bring up at this stage, but it basically is composting. And what that does is that allows you to take, say, you could work on a character's animation, right? And you're going to take that character and you're going to make it do whatever it is they're going to do. I'm going to work on the other character. And we'll take and compost those two together and make one scene out of the two actions. And that will automatically, I can say, okay, who's on top, who's on bottom from the layer perspective, and then basically put that all together. And I can do different lighting between the two scenes. You can actually adjust the lighting after you've rendered the scene using those various tools. It basically allows you to do the same thing you do like with Photoshop. You can adjust the lighting after you've taken the picture. It has the ability, and it uses a I don't know if I can bring it up here. This node editor. Say like add an output node or an input node. I don't have everything all set up properly for this, but you've got these different nodes, and you can basically have your images come in through these input nodes, and then you can do processing through those nodes to pull it out. I don't have it set up to do this for here, but basically, then when you do that, you can actually do pre-processing to the image. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's go back to what you did. So these are just different panels that, and again, you need to you kind of need to go through the tutorials to see what it is you want to do. There's so much here. There's a game engine that I barely scratched the surface on that'll allow you to write games and then export. There's interface with what's that big game engine?
Unity?
Yeah. And so you can export from here. You can also create models in here or export them into other packages. Okay.
I think if there's some way to incorporate storyboarding, they call it, to do animation.
The storyboard, you mean? Yeah. Well, that's typically a part of the production process.
Right.
Yeah, they'll do a storyboard, and then they'll determine what characters, and then then the modelers will do the modeling, and
I've seen, on some DVDs, they'll show you historically process they went through. And it's like a charcoal stick, and then they do stuff on top of it, and they give a little more on top of that, and more on top of that.
Yep. Yep. There's a whole process to the whole production, especially when you get multiple people going, because there are people who will do the models, then there's people who are going to do the texture, and there are different people who are going to do the lighting. There's different people who are going to do the animation. You know, it very much becomes an assembly line type of thing, and you know essentially you're working in whatever your best skill. Now, when you freelance like I do, I just do it all.
Mhm.
But when you get into the production studios, that's why whenever you get some of these kids coming out of school who study 3D graphics and everything, they say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to go work for Pixar. Yeah, you and about 4 million other people. You know, it's a very competitive. It's actually a very competitive industry. The salaries are not as high as you would think they would be. I mean, general IT probably is better paid than the 3D. Yeah, for the modelers and those folks. Obviously, the movies make a lot more money.
You mean the peons?
Yeah, the people who do the work.
Oh, those people. Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about the producers or the actors.
You're referring to the mouse movers. They don't count. They're not human.
Yeah, right.
As opposed to Mickey, who is the mouse being moved.
He's the one that gets paid.
Is there anything else anyone would like to see since we've got a little bit of time?
I want to watch Big Buck Bunny.
Oh, you want to see Big Buck Bunny? Okay, we can do that. You get back to Chrome here.
While you're looking for that, I'll mention, you talked about it being a physics engine here, and
Yes.
there's an O'Reilly book called The Physics of Games, if I remember the title correctly. And it's basically, it probably should have been titled The Physics of Animation or whatever, but basically it's how you can, like the engine that Ed's talking about, how you can impose gravity and resistance and friction and things like that into the animation. And it gets extremely complex. You determine the viscosity of fluids, so how fast things will flow or splash.
So this is an animation. This was made as part of an open source. This was an open source animation. Again, you can see the water.
And this was done years ago.
About 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, at least
5 or 6. Zeldin Stream was first, right?
Did you
It's
guys
all
see
done with
Simple?
Blender?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's sad. That one's a tearjerker.
Did you actually watch the background during that?
What do you mean?
All the stuff in the background. Everybody's worried about the foreground story. You just check out the background. It's intense.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Which? Which one?
The latest production out for Blender.
Oh.
This is on YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah, this is on YouTube, yes.
Okay.
But this was made and rendered on Blender.
Wow.
What kind of actual workstation do you use when you're doing
I have
work?
an i7, actually an HP i7 processor. It's got a actually it's a wide laptop with a second monitor.
Okay.
But I'm actually thinking to upgrade to 3 monitors at some point.
On the user interface, do the menus tear off like the older style like GIMP, or are they just you have to have a separate render window?
You can pull the views out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd be able to
Extend it.
dedicate one monitor for tools and another for.
Yeah, typically, what I've got is like if I'm doing modeling, I'll have one monitor is where the model is, and some of the importing textures, and then the other one will be like a 2D texture program like GIMP or Photoshop. And then what I do is I can use that to paint the image, and then I can refresh over on the other, and I can see exactly how it's going to look as you're going through. The other thing Blender has the ability to do, I didn't show, was I can take and pop out those panels.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you can actually have multiple windows.
So that would be your purpose to go to the 3 monitor setup. You'd have a tool set basically,
Yeah.
and then your workspace, and then maybe a
Yeah.
utilities window or something.
Right.
Or the browser or whatever. Documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you typically you'll find what works for you, and you'll set up. And the other thing that Blender has the ability to do is you can set up multiple work environments, and you can just select and say, okay, I want to do UV mapping. Okay, I'll select my UV mapping, and it'll change all the panels. Or I'm doing modeling. Okay, it'll change the mod to modeling or whatever. And so whatever panels you need for that function, you can set up what you need and how they're going to be.
There are restrictions on the hardware processor based on how big the model gets. I mean, you start at a choke point, you got 4 gig, it starts to.
I mean, depending, the larger the model, the more memory you need to hold all the vertices and all of the data points. Scenes too. I mean, if you've got, that's it, like this right here. The background on this is a JPEG image, so probably doesn't really count. But the bunny, the tree, are actually, the bunny looks fairly, it's probably a medium resolution. It doesn't have a lot of detail. You can kind of tell if it's got a high resolution model or low resolution, basically by the number of creases. So like his fingers are pretty low res actually.
Yeah.
And I can show you I can show you the model, how that works a little bit. How long is this?
17, 18 minutes. Oh, it's only 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's only done.
Commando.
Or storage space, disk storage, and you find it limited by disk speed. You do like solid state disk for rendering, or you just had not an issue at all.
You mean as far as disk
I mean,
space?
yeah, if you don't, obviously you're not doing video, but rendering out video. Then
Yeah, I mean, when I can show you guys one of the animations I did that was actually in the Nashville Film Festival. But that one had a fairly small amount of animation, but when you do the animation, or when I do the animation, I do it actually in individual cells. So each image is a PNG, a separate image, and then we put those together, just like the old-fashioned, drawing type thing.
Mhm.
We put those together, and then the video editor puts them in together to sequence them. And so you need a lot of room on disk to store all those images, especially because you never get it right the first time. So you got to do it multiple times.
Equivalent to doing take 1, take 2.
Well, yeah, I'll show you the one that I did. It was a real rush thing. We had a hard deadline. It had to be done by the first week of December, and the gal that asked me to help her do this contacted me like at the end of October. So we had only about 4 or 5 weeks to get all the animation done, and it was tight. We actually ran out of time. There was one more scene we wanted to do, but it's really one of those things where you never really stop working. You never really finish. You just stop working on it because you get to the point where, okay, it's good enough. And
yeah, it's like coding. You got bugs and things and features, and you just got to quit, ship something.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you have a team, what kind of workflow does it lend itself to? Do you have would you have like a central server that you'd store everything on, and then everyone have workstations, or is there a mechanism that supports that?
Yeah, typically you'll have individual workstation, Linux, Windows, what have you. And then they typically will use a render farm. So you'll have a set of servers that just do the renders. So like I did the render of the one image of these test images. Those went pretty quick because they're very simple. You get into some of these where there's really, like he's got fur coming in. That's going to take a long time to render. You can have it can be so bad that on a single desktop that one frame can take 30 minutes, depending on what all's in that frame.
I remember reading articles about how basically kind of, I guess, Blender kind of created an organization, kind of bought its freedom, if you want to call it there, before they raised $120,000 to buy it, basically as open source. But the first websites for it said, don't bother, you're never going to run this on anything you have in your house. You know, this is 2004, 3, somewhere in that time frame, and they were saying, you're never going to run this in your house because starting off, you're going to need an 8-core processor, right? You know, enormous amounts of money for this era.
Yeah.
Now that's somewhat high-end desktop, but it's still something you go to Best Buy and get.
Yeah. Well, I run about 4 or 5 machines that just do renders when I'm doing something like a project or something. Like this project I'm working on.
I remember your article from that old Pixel Core group 5 years, 7 years ago, where they were talking about where they had set up machines just for storage. You know, they might have to use bonded channels for gigabit just to get enough speed, and they'd have to use RAID 0 because that was the only thing fast enough at the time just to copy the files on and off. So they were using somewhat dedicated hardware back 06, 07 frame.
Wait,
Hold on.
wait for it.
So anyway,
we're waiting for the end here.
there's okay.
It's over.
No, it's not over yet.
Not over till it's over.
Who's gonna poop on it? No. Yeah.
All right. So that particular video, you can download the source to that, the Blender source, and the Blender files, and you can actually see how they did all of the effects in there, and there's documentation that goes with it. So it was an open source community project. Synthel was another one. I think that might be this one. No, yeah, Synthel. Yeah. Synthel is another one that's very
Actually,
similar.
is it up there at the top? What's up at the top? One more over.
Blender Open Movies.
Yeah, it's a playlist of all of them.
Yeah. These are just.
So you just hit the next button.
Oh, these are just.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
playlist.
it's the same one. Yeah, these are the different ones that they've been working through. Yeah.
Okay, that's not one that you had gone down to called Very Funny. I mean, considering that Tux is our mascot, it really looks like that's the one that we should have played.
We're going to see some of Ed's work now.
All right, I'm just going to show one here. This was a combination. So this was a combination of live video and animation that was put together actually as a school project. There was actually a whole group of people that worked on it. See, and the kids, they came out really good with the animation, don't you think?
The kids, you mean? Yeah,
It does look realistic. doesn't it?
Yeah.
Scary.
The animation's really good there too.
It's anything.
Can't fix it with duct tape and super glue.
If only we could make our friends better with duct tape.
Got me out of a cave one day. That was way back in the top 2 miles in the cave and my shoe broke. And I wrapped a whole bunch of duct tape around it. It worked. Got me out of the cave.
We debated on whether to have him come back to life or not.
Um,
And we kind of ran out of time with that.
no, it's
Anyway, the character was actually created and textured in Blender, and then we did the actual animation was done in Poser, and then all was kind of superimposed, put together. They actually did the live footage before they asked me to do the animation, which actually made it harder because we couldn't plan it out. So there were things like when they were taking pictures inside the bus is going like this, but the character's sitting still. And it looks like the character's going like this. So there's tools you have to use in the editor to get it to lock onto an object in the image and move the character with the background. So a lot of those kinds of things had it. But unfortunately, they didn't talk to me first. They just said, hey, would you put this in there? Sure. Okay.
I forget what Poser does as opposed to Blender.
Poser is, it's less complex than Blender. It is basically, what it does is works with already pre-made objects and then allows you to do the lighting and the animation of the object from where it's created elsewhere. It's really just more of, it's used, quite frequently it's used to create educational videos. Some of the videos that you see on like what do they call those things at the grocery store where they have the automated checkout things, and there's like a help thing that says, okay, here's how you use this. A lot of those are done in Poser. It basically gives you an ability to kind of create a very quick and dirty animation with predefined, pre-built objects.
It's a
So when you're going
pose.
when you're going through Share CG looking for content, there'll be a lot of Poser stuff out there. And Poser, you can get Poser, the entry-level version of it, for sometimes as cheap as $49. The professional version is like $300, something like that. All right. Anything else anyone would like to see while we have this?
Can you animate the camera for 60 frames to rotate 90 degrees?
Yeah, probably. Let's see. All right, so what we want to do here.
How do you raise it up above the floor?
Oh,
That's a key
all right.
part.
Really, what you want to do, we're going to get into outline mode, and then
Because if you leave it in that mode, isn't half of it hide?
well, there's a couple ways to do it. I'm going to do it the cheap and dirty way manually, but you can also there's also an alignment tool. I didn't set it up on here.
There you go.
Get it set right there. All right. So now what we can do then is go into the camera.
Associate to your Canon.
Okay.
I think it's on another layer there somewhere.
I'm missing something.
It's on a separate layer.
You know, the problem is the layer thing's gone.
Yeah, if you jump to your camera view,
Let's see.
so view, bottom option, right there. And your layers are completely gone.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to them.
There they are now.
Probably a bug. Okay, well we'll just rotate around the on the camera. So let's see. What we're going to want to do here is select. We're going to cursor. Actually, cursor's already there. There's this thing right here. It's called the 3D cursor. It's a really cool little tool that lets you move things around in a lot more precision. So if I'm going to go here and I want to take cursor to select it, that's going to move the cursor to the origin of this object. Now if we do a view camera, okay, that should be good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate trying to think the easiest way to do this. Let's go to the top. Okay, so I want the camera to rotate around here from the cursor. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to parent this. So now when I rotate, so that's rotating around its origin. So now I come to 3D cursor. That's going to put, that's going to rotate the camera around the object, right? Based on where the 3D cursor is. The other thing I can do is I could move the origin of the camera to be the same as the origin here, but that would permanently change the camera.
Oh.
For this scene anyway.
Yeah.
So by basically just by doing around the cursor. Now, of course, the problem is if I move the cursor, the rotation changes, right? So let's put this back. There's this thing, Shift S is snap. There we go. Okay, so now then the next thing we've got to do, you said you wanted to go 60 frames?
Just, yeah, something to show them.
Let's go to 60 frames. Okay, then what I want to do is bring the I want to set the position of the camera.
Boy, you could teach a whole couple of college courses about this.
Yeah. So then what you have to do in order to get this to rotate as an animation, you need to create keyframes. Let me just double check and make sure this is working. No, that's not all. I've got to do it. I've got to do the whole rotation. So you would basically take, and we want to create add a keyframe. So insert keyframes. Okay, so now what I have done is I've created keyframes for these parameters, and what that basically means is, and wherever I create a keyframe, the system will automatically interpolate the difference in those parameters from one keyframe to the next. So let's say I have an object at x coordinate 0, and in frame 60 I want it to be in x coordinate 10. You create a keyframe at frame 0, and you set the object to location 0. You move your time layout to frame 60, wherever that, and set the keyframe, and then move the object to the new location. When you play back, it will move that object across the screen. So let's take we've got this keyframe here. What I really need to do is take this back to 0, and we need to set. So I want to insert keyframe here. Insert keyframe here. Come back to 60. Okay. 60. I'm sorry. 60. There we go. 60. And now we'll rotate the camera to there. So as I move the timeline, oops, where did it go? Oh, I forgot to insert the keyframe. Sorry. Now, that's going to move the camera from that standpoint. So now if we go and do a view camera, putting it around the object, so I could again now if I'm going to zoom out or whatever, I've got to reset keyframes and all that stuff. But no, I'm sorry, I got the camera here. Anyway, does that give you an idea of what you're doing?
Can you render it and play it real quick? Or?
Which point you want to render, like here? Yeah. Or render the whole movie? Yeah. Yeah, let me we're gonna do that. Let me go back here. Okay, let's back up. So take that off, bring that in. Okay. Go back to frame 1.
animation.
Probably should turn the resolution down a little bit.
Yeah, probably.
And you have the object change during the animation.
Hmm?
Yeah, you set the object at the beginning and change the object at the end. And it'll morph between the beginning and the end.
Yeah, let me do something a little different. That's yeah, again, start a new. Let's go back to frame 1. Okay, let's go back. Start a new one here. We'll go to view front. And let's move the. Hold on. There we go. All right. So let's say we've got this cube object. Rather than moving the camera, let's move the object here. Go into the object, and I basically am going to insert a keyframe right here at frame 1. I have the keyframe. I've got a keyframe. It's in location 000. So now what I want to do is move this 60 and move it out to here. Insert keyframe, and then like that'll move it from there to there.
Hmm.
And you can keyframe basically anything, right? So for example, let's say I came here, frame 1, go back to frame 60. Actually, let's go back to frame 1. Go to frame 1, then let's take the scale there. Here, I want the scale to double in size. Okay. Then insert a keyframe for that. Oh, I did that on 57 at a time. So now if I go back and play, it'll grow and move. So any of these parameters in here, you can basically adjust those to just keep replaying. And then
Can
when
you
you
add a third keyframe and have it come towards, like, closer, come out of the frame and you're like at a diagonal?
well, yeah, basically what I could do is I can go to frame 60.
Okay, but come
Okay,
back.
and instead of coming here, I'll have it come, say like here, and then we'll insert the keyframe. If I have, I'm going to screw up the keyframes here, but that's okay.
It jumped.
It jumped because I have keyframes in there. So what I need to do is go to so I can this keyframe here is the size. Clear keyframe here. All right, all right. So then we go back to now we can go to the next keyframe. Oops. Okay. Oh, okay. So the only thing we've got now, let's just play it here real quick, is it just only the scale keyframe is in place. So stop this, we'll go back to frame 1, I'll insert a location. Move this back to here. We'll insert a keyframe for that. And 60.
You can turn it off.
And then we'll move this here. Keyframe. Now if I play it, let's say that background. So it'll come wherever you set it, it'll automatically go there or scale.
Mhm.
And then if you want, then you can also go back here to.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to put the keyframe in.
Make sure you save.
Yeah, so rotate.
And notice it's not moving linearly, it's accelerating and decelerating. Is that under the option where it's a rotational M something?
Well, it looks like it's
XYZ Euler?
the acceleration is actually an optical illusion. The reason it looks like it's accelerating is because I'm scaling it up as it's coming to you.
Yeah, because it's growing in size.
Yeah, it's growing in size, so it gives the illusion that it's moving faster.
Okay.
If I were to get rid of the scale,
Remember that day in art class when they were trying to teach us perspective?
yeah, yeah.
It all comes back.
That's the day that you fell asleep.
So now that I've done away with the scale,
Yeah.
it's going to not look quite as fast. And also, the closer it gets, the faster it's going to look too,
Yeah.
That's called
from the perspective.
What's the drop down below your keyframe boxes where it says rotation M something XYZ Euler? What's
What's
that option do?
The rotation, yeah, it's XYZ based on these
Okay.
coordinates.
Okay.
So this would be the Y. I'm sorry, the Z, X, and Y. So that's where these are set. And again, when you're dealing with like a character, there's a whole other set of things that you deal with there, where you actually create the skin of the character, its mesh, and then you apply an armature.
Right. So you can do the skeleton.
So that it's like a skeleton, so you can move the arms and things like that. Yeah. There's a whole set of tools that allow you to do those things through. The other thing that's kind of cool. Let me stop this. In terms of when you're getting into modeling. So, for example, if let's start with this view front. So I'm going to go into the model here and scale line just a little thinner. We'll cut a spot here. And there. Okay, then go into face mode and extrude. kind of create arms.
We could actually design buildings in this program.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So we'll,
Makes it get another 6-month project.
okay, like a little man
Yeah.
kind of thing. I could give, you could break it down here, give more feet, whatever. Now, then what you got are various tools here that can help make it look a little more interesting. So like we have a subsurface subdivision
Round it out.
that essentially gives it a little smoother look. Come over here, and we will move it out. Looks a little smoother from there. So, when you saw the, and the other thing, I can change the subdivision, make it a little smoother here. So, like when you saw the bunny, and you saw his fingers were kind of round like that, that was actually a fairly simple model in terms of the fingers and the hands going through. Because if you take, like if I take the chest part here,
Make it a little fatter.
and move it out a little bit,
Yeah.
and move it down, you can start to get, you want to give him a big, make it a little fatter if we want, you can basically kind of mold it around. You want to move it back out a little bit. Very easily, you can get him into to become, the Pillsbury Doughboy,
Yeah.
what have you. Right. And then you can apply the armature into there, and then you can move the parts. You also don't have to do an armature. I can actually animate this with points as well. But the other thing that's really kind of a cool thing from a modeling perspective. Let's go ahead and get rid of him. So let's say I'm going to add we'll add another cube, and then I'm going to I'll cut it in half. There's different modes. This is vertex mode, line mode, face mode, depending on which parts of the model you want to work on. Like, so we'll cut this thing in half, and then I'll take these points and delete them. Then I'll go to the modifier, and I'll add a mirror. So now that's mirrored it. So now if I come in here and cut a little thing here, and say cut here, and then we're going to take this face here. And so whatever I do to one side will automatically happen to the other. So if I screwed out, say, an arm of some kind, it'll automatically do it here. So this is very useful when you're doing faces. You only have to model one side of the face. If you're doing a symmetrical character, you only have to do one half of the character, the other half automatically just gets replicated to the other side.
That's pretty good.
So,
And then you can put the beauty mark on the same spot on both sides.
you can, or what you can do, once you get it looking the way you want, use this little apply button here. It'll be outside of apply it. And now I can modify one side versus without doing the other. So again, it's just a lot of it's just practice. I'm looking through different parts of it. I guess the other thing we could, if you guys want to see some of the other things, we can try to do some of the physics stuff. That gets a little tricky. The way the physics engine works, depending, there's a couple of different things in there. There's particle systems, where you can say create different models, call them particles, and then you can have them grow out of the surface. This is useful if you're doing things like trees and you want leaves. You can model 1 or 2 leaves, and then you create the base mesh for the tree, and then tell it to essentially populate a particle system with the leaves, and it'll put the leaves all over the tree for you.
And they become kind of essentially independent actors based on as each frame is rendered. Then is that how it works, based on the model for each particle?
It's based on the model for each particle, and then when you set it up, you tell it where you want that to be, where you want it to be.
Now, is it? I keep seeing references to Python. Is that
Yes.
the primary scripting language that's used in it, or is it just one of?
No, Python is pretty much everything. Any of these controls that are add-ons that are in are written in Python. So you can actually write your own Python scripts. I did that a couple of them, but yeah.
Or automate some processes.
Yes. For example, if I create a model that I want to export, and I built it, for example, I did one where it was a wall. It was big. It was actually a building. And I wanted to be able to, when I exported it, say I want to be able to hide a wall so I could set up the camera to have the characters working inside the room, for example. And then basically you create the wall, and then you break it up into sub objects basically. And so then I wrote a script in Python to take everything that's selected and export all the objects. Otherwise, you'd have to export each object individually. So those are just little things that you could do to automate workflow within Blender. Right? A lot of times, if there's something you want to do, if you go do a search for it, chances are somebody's already written it for you. You just have to go find it. But, anyway, there's a lot of things. A lot of the things in these modifiers that are really pretty cool. Like there's a screw modifier that will essentially allow you to take an object and 10 degrees. It'll kind of. This is a little better with. Let me get a different object. Oh, actually, yeah. Let me get a different object here. Let's delete this. If I add cube, and then I'm going to. Spaces. Add a screw modifier. So I'm going to go 10 degrees. Steps. Actually, I'll do this different. Let's go back to get rid of the modifier. You can kind of take and use it kind of like a lathe type of thing. Those kinds of things, steps, what have you. Then it'll also do various shapes that you can just kind of set a parameter to. Set the parameters on. other ones you've got multi-resolution meshes. That has to do with if you want to do, you can actually do like, you can create this blob of putty and you can mold it by mouse or by solidify is kind of a really useful one. If let's say we take this, add say a plane or some kind of a model that you're working on, and if you add a solidify, that'll actually create thickness to the mesh. So you could basically just create a shell and then add to it. There's also a lot of pre-canned objects that you can use. One of the big test ones is the monkey. You can play with the monkey to make it more smooth. You can add a subsurface modifier, make it even more smooth, and kind of play with that. So there's a lot. There's also, I don't know if that's installed on this one. Yeah, there is text. You can actually do three-dimensional text. We actually put in what it says. I don't think it's here. No. I haven't done this one in a while. Anyway, you can go in here and you can create three-dimensional text. They've relocated that, so I'd have to go look and see where they put that. But anyway, there you can go in and say what
where to type in the actual word. You looking for where to type in the actual word?
Yeah.
It's on the right-hand side, 1/3 of the way down, above the rotation scale.
Nope, it says text.
What's this text?
You're on your third pair of glasses.
I need a third pair of glasses.
It's okay, Ed. Gary's blind.
I'm blind. What'd you say?
Yeah. Oh, you see it here?
On the right menu?
No, Ed. He didn't see it.
He didn't see it. Okay. All right, I'm not saying it either, but I know there's a way to do it. Okay. Anyway, that's, like I said, there's tons of stuff in here. They also, from one version to the next, they have a tendency to change things, so you always have to go in.
Around to make you
See
look
what
for
they put. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions for Ed about Blender? You guys all going to go home and make models of your favorite critters?
See me in 6 years.
Yeah.
I'll be good at it.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Ed.
Actually, for although we should all have the homework assignment, we're going to give Ed the homework assignment because now he's going to have to use Poser and Blender to work on animating something there. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Actually, if I can find it here real quick.
And as Andrew pointed out last night, for those of you who weren't around that often, that was our speaker award for the evening.
There's one of the characters I sell.
Hey, all right.
Oh, really?
But the guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Penguin, whimsical cartoon.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, you
Yeah,
said
we-
you had some websites you're going to give us? You had some websites you were going to give us?
Yes, I am. Let me get those up here real quick. There we go.
That's it.
No, he's working on the other stuff.
Yeah. All right. So here's sources for content. Share CG. Content Paradise, that's where I sell my stuff. That one's free. There's a lot of free stuff and pay stuff. Turbo Squid, same thing. They give a lot of stuff away, but also stuff you can buy. Google SketchUp, the 3D warehouse at sketchup.com, that will work with Blender. I will warn you that a lot of times the way some of these people who've donated these models and they're put them together aren't always necessarily the best, and sometimes the textures don't quite work out right, but they are there. There's that link there, the sites.google. That is a description of how to use Google SketchUp if you want to use it in Blender. It gives you kind of step by step. I'll leave here till everybody tells me they got it written.
We can post this presentation later too.
Yeah.
I still need to post last night's presentation.
Yeah. For more information, CG Cookie /Blender is a really good free site for tutorials. That's pretty much where I started. There's some really good tutorials out there. The other one that I really liked was Blindtuts. That one has the guy that does most of them has I'm going to say a Spanish accent, either Spanish or French. I can't quite tell. But in any case, he's very good at explaining things and going through them in details. Books, Blender for Dummies, at least version 2. Yeah, hopefully there's going to be a version 3 for the 2.7.2 stuff. And then the 3D Basics. Do any of you have a subscription to Safari Books?
Yeah.
Yeah. Safari Books has these books plus tons more on Blender. So if you get it, we get the subscription free where I work. But if you can get that, it's got some really good stuff on how to work with Blender, how to do lighting, how to do all that stuff. Okay.
Yay!
That's right there.
Thank you. And thanks for the loan of the camera.
Yeah, now you have to give it back though. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on. I'm just getting used to it. There you go.
Something I was gonna mention that Ed had experience with, he's one of the few people I knew that actually had a Y2K experience.
Oh,
Was it you that
for
had
me,
it?
yes. Oh, yeah.
Come to work or something?
Y2K, yeah. For those who can, for those old enough to remember Y2K, yeah.
That's what I was going through.
It was the first time my career, my profession ever got me out of a traffic ticket.
Really? What happened?
Well, it was,
New
Year's Eve, 1999, and I was working at the time. I was working at what is now Sun Edison. I was in EMC at the time. And we had been going through our Y2K upgrades, getting everything ready to go. And what they basically had said was that we all had to be there at midnight for when they did all this, just to make sure everything was good. So I was on my way from my house going through O'Fallon where I live, and EMC is just on the other side of O'Fallon. And all of a sudden I get these flashing lights going on behind me. And the cop comes over and asks me where I'm going. And I say, well, I'm going to work. I've got working with the computers over at MEMC, and we need to get over there before midnight. And he looked, he asked for my driver's license, all that stuff. He looked all that, and he looked at me and said, are you really on your way to work? I said, yes. And it was just like all of a sudden it dawned on him. IT, Y2K, going to work at midnight. He said, thanks, go take care of your computer. Well, one of the unpublicized secrets of that place is that it used to be Monsanto electronic materials. It was originally, the facility was built in the 1950s. At the time, the reason they put the facility where they did was because the estimated crater size from a accident there would have been 5 miles. So they wanted to make sure they were far, far away from everything. If you ever go there, there are pictures of how the plant kind of grew over years. When it first there's this little building in the middle of nothing but cornfields. Well, the danger hasn't gone away.
Where is this now?
Like O'Fallon.
Okay.
Okay.
Just down the street from your house?
You know where Highway K is?
Yeah.
Okay. You know where Highway 79 is?
Yeah.
It's right at Highway 79 and 70.
Oh.
You can see it from 70.
Whoa.
And so when that thing goes,
Highway 70 is going to be.
it's, well, yeah, 5 miles around.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is the chemicals that they work with there. First of all, they have